It's an ordinary morning, another day where everything seems to be going as usual. Jed Eckert is a U.S. Marine who has just returned home to Spokane with his father, Police Sergeant Tom Eckert, and his younger brother Matt, who is focused on his dreams of becoming a high school football star. Everything seems normal, but not for long. The world is on the edge of chaos, though we don't fully perceive it. The news talks about how the largest deployment of U.S. troops overseas has left the continent vulnerable, and U.S. infrastructure is increasingly open to the threat of a cyber attack. Some believe that the threat was very distant and unreal, but that distance is shortened when they have to spend the whole night without electricity due to a mysterious power outage. And surprisingly, on the next morning, the sky is filled with fighter jets and helicopters. The invasion begins. North Korean forces enter the city, turning ordinary life into a nightmare. The Eckert brothers, like everyone else, are caught completely by surprise. Their father Tom tries to help them escape, but a North Korean soldier shoots at his patrol car and stops their escape attempt. So Tom tells his children to flee to the cabin in the woods, while he stays behind to help the townspeople. Seeing all the chaos around, Jed knows they can stay there. With a heavy heart, he leads his brother Matt and a group of friends he rescued from the North Koreans into the woods. During the rescue, they meet Matt's girlfriend, but she is captured by the enemy, so they continue without her. When they arrive at the cabin, another group of survivors joins them. Jed, with his wisdom, begins to give orders about what they should do and prepare a plan to find out what is happening. There's an atmosphere of uncertainty hanging over everyone in the cabin as they spend the night. The next morning, they discover that one of the boys is Goon and has taken all the food with him. Jed warns them that the North Koreans might now know where they are, so they need to be extra careful. Jed and Matt then went out into the streets to see what's happening, and they quickly realize that everything that was once familiar and safe is now in ruins. North Korean soldiers have taken control of the city with devastating force, and the invasion is complete. Jed and Matt can do nothing but watch as the once peaceful streets they knew are now filled with destruction, tanks crushing everything in their path, houses reduced to rubble, and life gone in the blink of an eye. When they return to the cabin, they find out that the friend who ran off has betrayed them and has revealed their location to the North Koreans. The enemy arrives accompanied by the town's mayor, who happens to be the father of one of the boys, and Tom, the Eckert brothers' father. Realizing the danger, the boys hide in the bushes, where they can hear the mayor trying to persuade them to surrender. Tom knew that he's about to die, but he stays super calm and delivers his final message to his sons. It's a message they will never forget. He tells them to keep going, to never give up, and to fight for what they believe in, even if it means losing everything. As soon as he finishes speaking, a bullet takes his life. The execution is quick and merciless. His final words hit them hard. In that moment, they are forced to accept the harsh reality. They are completely on their own, and if they want to survive, they'll have to find a strength they never knew they had. In the forest, Jed understands that they can't keep hiding. They need to fight back. So what started as a group of scared teenagers must now become an unstoppable force. Jed, with the strong determination of a Marine, takes on the role of leader with a huge resolve. There's no room for fear, only for action. They begin training with the hunting rifles they found at the cabin. The days are filled with tough lessons: how to handle weapons, how to move without being seen, and how to survive when every second could be their last. What were once inexperienced hands are now gripping rifles with growing confidence. But Jed teaches them one crucial lesson: surrender is not an option. They're not just fighting for themselves anymore, but for everything they've lost, for every family member and friend left behind. This is how the Wolverines are born. What was once just the high school football team's name has now become the symbol of their resistance, a battle cry that defines their purpose. After weeks of training, they begin launching guerrilla attacks on the enemy and their collaborators, including the friend who betrayed them. At first, the attacks are carried out using only the hunting rifles and basic electrical equipment from the cabin. But Jed realizes that if they want to keep fighting, they'll need more firepower. So they come up with a plan to acquire weapons. One of the girls volunteers to act as bait, luring the North Koreans into an ambush set by the Wolverines. The plan is simple. She passes through a checkpoint without being stopped, causing a group of North Korean soldiers to chase after her. Little do they know, she's leading them into a dead-end alley where the Wolverines are waiting to strike. The North Koreans are defeated, and the Wolverines are able to seize the weapons and ammunition they had with them. It's a small victory in the grand scheme of the war, but for them, it means everything. It's their first step towards something bigger, a statement that they won't be conquered, that they'll fight until their last breath. They realize they're no longer just survivors. They've become warriors, symbols of a battle far bigger than themselves. After a series of smaller attacks, they make a plan to strike the invaders during a political rally and take down Cho, the leader of the North Korean forces. But what should have been a strategic hit turns into a nightmare. Matt, overwhelmed by anger from the losses he's suffered and driven by his need for revenge, acts impulsively to rescue his girlfriend from the enemy's clutches. In doing so, he puts his entire group at risk. Instead of sticking to the plan, he gets caught up in the heat of the moment and opens fire too early. The carefully planned ambush falls apart, leading to complete chaos. Gunfire erupts, and what should have been a surgical strike turns into a bloodbath. Confusion begins, and the Wolverines find themselves in a desperate fight for their lives as the situation spirals out of control. Bullets fly, bodies fall, and the sound of death mingles with the screams of panic and the explosions of grenades. Amid the chaos, Jed tries to keep a cool head, but even he is overwhelmed by the intensity of the battle. The tension is thick. Every second feels like an eternity, and the young fighters are now in the heart of a massacre. The tragedy unfolds in slow motion. One of his friends is hit by a gunshot while trying to help Matt, and his body falls to the ground. In the middle of the chaos, the Wolverines escape in a car they found in a parking lot, while Matt and his girlfriend look for a way to get back to the shelter by mixing with the crowd. When they all regroup in the woods, Jed tells Matt about the death of their friend who had tried to help. They argue, but in the end, Matt rejoins the team. In revenge for the attack on the rally, the North Koreans start bombing the forest in an attempt to wipe out the Wolverines' headquarters. In the middle of this chaos, 2 more of their comrades are killed. Those who manage to survive feel demoralized. Each of them is now fighting their own inner battle, of deciding whether to keep fighting or give up. As the days go by, the Wolverines encounter 3 U.S. Marines, who join forces with them to fight against the North Koreans. The Marines tell them about the core of the enemy's power, an electromagnetic pulse device. This device is what pushed the city into darkness. With it, the North Koreans had been successful in disabling all technology and crushing resistance attempts. Destroying that device was the only way to take back what's been stolen from them. The mission becomes an act of both desperation and hope. The infiltration of the police station, which is now used as the North Korean headquarters and where the electromagnetic pulse device was located, was the climax of their fight. The building was full of machinery and there was danger in every corner. Jed, who was full of revenge, led the attack with severe intensity. The bullets flew against their enemies. The explosions were felt, and the brutality of the North Koreans gave no respite. Finally, the Wolverines managed to seize the device and kill the North Korean leader. After this, they retreat to a safe place to heal to their wounds and rest. It's in this moment that we witness one of the most emotional scenes. Jed speaks with his brother Matt, telling him how proud he is of him and apologizing for being away for so long. After this heartfelt reconciliation, Jed goes off to celebrate with his girlfriend, but their celebration is short-lived as they are ambushed by enemy forces. Jed is killed instantly in the shootout. After Jed's death, the situation becomes even more desperate and chaotic. His loss is a crushing blow, but what happens next is even more shocking. Matt, now hardened by war, steps up to take over as leader. In his eyes, there is no longer a trace of the naive young man he once was. They fight their way through the bodies and the chaos. They barely escape in time to see the installation go up in flames. The survivors, exhausted but determined, escape with the EMP device in a suitcase, heading for the extraction point where the Marines are waiting. But their escape doesn't come without sacrifice. They soon discover that one of their friends has an enemy tracker implanted in him, a device that allowed the North Koreans to track them and launch the attack that killed Jed. They're forced to make a devastating decision. They have to leave him behind. The scene is cold and raw, without room for emotions, as they understand that trying to save him would endanger the mission and their own lives. So they leave him with some supplies and a weapon. They press on, eventually reaching the Marines, who offer them the chance to escape and save their lives. Despite the opportunity to flee and find refuge, the Wolverines choose to stay and continue the fight. The Marines leave, and the Wolverines come to a sad realization. Even though they've won an important battle, the war is far from over. This acknowledgement of the ongoing struggle sends a powerful message. The story doesn't end with a happy conclusion. Instead, it leaves the characters and the audience facing the harsh reality of resistance. Now led by Matt, as they plan to free prisoners from the North Korean concentration camps. By the end, each of the Wolverines has changed, matured through suffering, and they are determined in their decision to keep fighting for their freedom.